So I know of a woman who was at a man's house. It was not her husband or her boyfriend. It was somebody else's husband. And they were having an affair. And during the middle of them being intimate, people charged into the house. And they pulled her out. Not him, but they pulled her out. And the reason that I know of this is from the Bible. Jesus was there. John was there to record these Pharisees, these very judgmental people that came in and pulled this woman out. And for us, there's times when you feel alone, and if being alone was a 0, there are other times where you feel even less than alone. You're in the negatives, like a -7. This woman was like at a -80 because she was in a crowd and she was very alone. And not only was she in the crowd and feeling absolutely alone, but she also knew what she was doing was wrong. And that's the thing about this story of the adulterous woman, is that we see it and we have compassion for her, which is what we're supposed to. But we can never say, oh, it's not that big of a deal, though. I mean, you just slept with someone else's husband. And in the same way, he should be held accountable. Because sin is a real problem. That's not what this message is about. But I never want us to just go around it, because it's a reality. And the reality of the damage of what sin does in our lives and the lives of others is what makes Jesus's behavior, his teaching, his coming for us, dying for us, and rising from the dead. It's what makes it so beautiful. And so we have all of these things. All of these, they're not mistakes. It's called sin. It means when you know what you should be doing, but you do something else, or maybe you didn't know, but you do it, and then right as you do it, you realize that was wrong. And you try to cover it up, or you try to ignore it, or hope nobody saw, or you try to lessen it. I can tell you that there is nothing more intense than the fight that goes on between ladies over clothes. They may be siblings, or in my current case, it's a mother and a daughter. And because I want my daughter to listen to these sermons, I will share about her, and I will hope that she will watch them. We'll see how that goes. But she will take my wife's clothes. She will just come in and take her mom's clothes. And she knows she's not, I mean, this is not a new conversation between them. And so she is taking them, and then she's justifying it. Now, as a very intelligent husband and father, I stay out of it as much as possible. But if I were to say to my daughter, you're a thief, and you're lying about it, so that means you're a thief and a liar. Sounds pretty intense, doesn't it? But that's the truth. How many of us have lied ever? Just about all of us at one point or another, or even at this very moment. You know what that makes us? A liar. We've all seen something and taken it, or thought it didn't belong to anybody, or maybe we knew it belonged to somebody and we took it. That means that we are a thief. I know it sounds a little intense. It sounds like maybe overdoing it, but that's the reality, right? I mean, if that's not what a thief does, then what is a thief? And if we go through the 10 Commandments, those are tough to keep. And when you look at that and you realize all the ways in which we've fallen short, that's what makes Jesus' sacrifice so beautiful and so intense and so grace-filled, because none of us deserve it. And so I want to slowly go through this woman's story. But more importantly is what Jesus says right at the end. And so as we look closer here, we see this woman. And as I've said, she's already been pulled out by the Pharisees. And they bring her to the crowd, but they're bringing her to Jesus because they want to catch him. Because if he were to just say, oh, it's no big deal, they'd go, okay, you know that sin is a big deal. So there has to be some kind of punishment. And if he were to say, well, yeah, I mean, the law says you're supposed to stone her. Stoning, not in our sense of the word, but stoning as in rocks. She's to be stoned, killed by rocks. And so they feel like they've trapped him. He can't get out of this, because either way, if he says to kill her, then he's not the Messiah of love that he's communicated. They were trying to trap him, and they kept demanding an answer. So he stood up again, and he said, all right, then let the one who has never sinned, never fallen short, let him be given permission to throw the first stone. And he stoops down again, and it says that he wrote in the dust. What was he writing? Something I didn't know before was that word, to write, could mean just writing. And there's another word, so there's two words for writing. One just means write. The other one means to write an indictment, which means to write what is wrong. And the word that's used is that he's writing something that they've done wrong. It's an indictment. Now, it's really just a theory, but it would make sense, wouldn't it? And so you've got all these Pharisees who are the best of the best in not making mistakes, not sinning. And the first one to drop their stone is the oldest. And the way it's communicated is that they all start dropping their stones based on their age, which means based on their experience, which means based on their wisdom. When you get older, you don't get smarter as much as you get wiser. And you realize, yeah, you fall short and you're not perfect. And maybe you've got a good system on how you've hidden it this whole time, or maybe you're a person that's very transparent and you make it obvious and you laugh at yourself. But either way, the older you get, the wiser you get, which would make sense that that's how the condemnation and the judgment washed away. Because they were all in the same situation as this woman. They'd fallen short. But she needs to be killed. Not me. So they all leave. And Jesus asks her a question. He says, where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them stay to condemn you? Of course, she said no. That's all she said. No, Lord. And they said, neither do I. Go and sin no more. Go and sin no more. He's setting her free. If there's anyone there that could condemn her, it'd be him. And he chooses not to. He chooses instead to set her free because he has the ability to do that. And then he says, looking at the crowd, very next thing he says, I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't have to walk in darkness because you will have the light that leads to life. Now, that verse makes sense. Those words from Jesus make things right. I was looking at them preparing. I'm like, this could mean so many different things. And I've taught on this before, but I never thought of it in context, which is what you're supposed to do when you look at God's word, when you think of these situations, like what's happening when Jesus says this. And what's happening is there's a woman here who is walking in darkness. I'm not just talking about the mistakes she's made. I'm talking about the fact that she is alone. Nobody's standing up for her. They're embarrassing her. She's not even a human being in the people's eyes. She's just a way to trap Jesus. And Jesus says, I am the light of the world. If there's just a piece of darkness, it's gone. I mean, when you think about it, there is no place dark enough that will hide the light from a match. And that's not a whole lot of lumens. It's weak in terms of the different kinds of light. And yet there is no darkness that can overcome the light. And so when Jesus says, I am the light, it means nothing you've gone through, nothing you're experiencing, nothing that's happening is too much for him. And when he says, I am the light of the world, that also communicates, I'm present. I'm with you. Always. And then he says, because you will have the light that leads to life. You cannot separate the word light and life. The word life helps you to understand light and vice versa. This is powerful stuff. It's powerful stuff because life is just brutal. And there are so many times that you will be alone. And you need to be reminded that Jesus is the light of the world and that he is present. Light reminds us of his presence. And when you have that, you have everything you need. May God bless.